It is being dubbed a celebration of life, a public memorial for a people's politician. Albertans from all walks of life will gather Friday at the Jack Singer Concert Hall in downtown Calgary to remember Ralph Klein, the former premier, mayor, television reporter, passed away Good Friday at the age of 70. Joining us tonight to share some insight into what made Ralph Klein tick and why he had such an impact on our political landscape, Shirley McClellan, a longtime Conservative MLA who held numerous cabinet portfolios in the Klein government, including Deputy Premier. Shirley, good to see you. Welcome to Alberta Primetime. And I should also mention you're also now Chancellor at the University of Lethbridge. Also tonight, Calgary Centre MP Joan Crockatt, former Legislature Bureau Chief for the Edmonton Journal in the early 1990s. Of course, a politics panelist right here in Alberta Primetime in the past. Joan, good to see you as well.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm well. Shirley, let's start with you. You were there when Ralph Klein made that transition from civic politics into the provincial fray. If memory serves, you handed in your resignation as an MLA the same day that he did, not that many years ago.
I did, January the 15th.
All those years working alongside of him, what have they left you with?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to encapsulate the man. I really was there when he came. His office was across the hall from mine when he was Minister of Environment. And we gave him a hard time. We told him we were going to had a petition to get him removed. And Ralph didn't know us very well, and he was quite stricken. And we said it was because of the TV cameras and the lights and the noise in the corridor. But so he was across the hall from me for that period of time, and that's when I really got to know Ralph Klein.
And what stuck with you from that time that still resonates today?
Well, what really struck me then was he came in as a rookie politician and went into the Ministry of Environment, which at that time was pretty tough. It was pulp mills, it was, a lot of issues. And I was absolutely astounded how quickly he picked it up. He didn't like big briefing books. He didn't like extensive discussions on these things. He wanted short, succinct, and then he could take that and distill it and get the nub of the issue and get ahead of it, and that just astounded me.
Joan, former Premier Don Getty has called him a hero and a damn good Albertan, and there have been many echoing similar sentiments the past few days. What resonates with you most about Ralph Klein, the man?
It's just how likable he was. I mean, with Ralph, he was sort of the master of naked honesty, and, he said what he thought, and I think that even when he put his foot in his mouth, he was quick to recognize if he'd said the wrong thing and apologize, and people were very forgiving of him, whereas they're not forgiving of a lot of other politicians. But I like to really remember him because I think he had a tremendous impact not only in Alberta, but also in Canada and North America, from balancing the books and slaying the debt monster, as he put it. I mean, 7 provinces ended up with balanced budget legislation after Ralph Klein introduced it, and 49 U.S. states followed. So that was really quite a profound impact on sort of the finances of North America. And I think that that's something that is sometimes forgotten in how gregarious Ralph was and how quick he was with the quip. He actually used those communication skills to better the province and better the future.
Mm-hmm. Shirley, is that what gave him such longevity as a politician?
I think it did. I had the privilege, of course, attending a few First Ministers' conferences with him.
As Deputy Premier.
And, the respect that he commanded from the rest of the premiers was really quite unusual, because Alberta's, not seen as the #1 province always in federal discussions.
Maybe not at that time.
Not at that time. Not that, that we weren't recognized, but Ralph's had the same ability there to listen to all of the discussion, and of course I wasn't privy to all of the discussion. But this is what the other premiers would tell me, and he would listen to it, and then he could distill it into a simple statement that brought everything together. And he was very well respected in that forum.
Joan, you mentioned the deficit monster, the debt dragon. Ralph Klein made financial decisions that won him a lot of popularity, but also earned him some enemies. In 10 years' time, will Albertans remember him as being more loved or as being hated?
Oh, I think they totally remember him as being more loved. And I think even members of the press gallery, you're hard-pressed to find anybody who really has a bad word to say about Ralph. And one of the things that I really remember is the day he went out and faced a demonstration in front of the ledge in Edmonton, and I'm sure Shirley remembers this, 2,500 people. They filled the mall in front of the legislature. A lot of politicians would have stayed inside and not addressed it. Ralph decided he was going to go out and talk to them. And I think that he was ready to face issues like that. And it was one of the things that people admired about him. He didn't back down when he was right. He did back down when he was wrong. And, you know, of all the people who are commenting on Ralph Klein, I think one thing really comes across is that everybody found him to be such a genuine and honest character that you couldn't help but love the guy. He was often underestimated, but he had a very quick mind, photographic memory, and he really could, as Shirley has pointed out so well, take large issues and boil them down into that soundbite that really made people get it. The deficit is like your credit card bill, the debt is like your mortgage, and this is why we should pay it off.
Shirley, how much of Ralph Klein's success was his own doing? How much of it was by the people he surrounded himself with?
Well, that was one of Ralph's talents and one of his strengths. He didn't pretend to know everything about every issue and about every sector of the economy, but he recognized talented people that did, and he listened to them, and he took their advice, and he believed it wasn't just about the debt and the deficit. It was what you could accomplish if you managed those issues. He envisioned a province where jobs would be plentiful. He envisioned a world-class health facilities. He often talked about Mayo North. And he envisioned things like the Mazankowski Heart Institute. And it always kind of pains me when I hear that, you know, we didn't do anything in infrastructure, that we let it go. And I look at the Anthony Hendy, that didn't happen yesterday. I look at Stoney Interchange in Calgary, that didn't happen yesterday.
There is still a resentment out there from the public sector side.
Yes, there is. And it is kind of sad because we hear about the closing of the Holy and the blowing up of the General, which isn't true, it imploded, not blew up. But there's never any discussion about the opening of what was a world-class health facility, the Peter Lougheed, which wasn't fully utilized. So,
and a lot of that need for infrastructure too, and I'm sure Shirley agrees, was because when Ralph Klein balanced the budget and brought taxes down, people flocked into Alberta by the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and because of that we needed more infrastructure. So it wasn't so much that he cut infrastructure, it was that the growth of Alberta, because it became such a magnet for business and for people, it increased the demand for those things.
Look at the head offices that moved here. I mean, it's
second largest head office capital in the country.
In the country, and that was not there before. So there is a legacy, and I remember asking Ralph in one of our discussions, you know, what would you really like to be your legacy? And I think we were talking about naming of buildings and so on. And he said, it isn't about naming a building or a mountain or anything like that. He said it's to leave this place better than I found it, leave this province better than I found it. He was first of all, he was a huge Calgarian. There's no question about that. He and I got along on a lot of things, but not on our sports teams. I could tell you some stories about that. But he was a very, very strong Calgarian, but he was a huge Albertan.
And he was a Canadian as well.
He was such a Canadian. I got to tell you one really quick one. I was with him when we went to the Winter Games in Red Deer. And we were standing there for the opening ceremonies. And when those 3,000 kids walked into that arena, you know, they dimmed the lights, did the thing. He turned to me and there were tears in his eyes. And he said, Shirley, this is what Alberta's about. I get choked up just thinking about it. And that was Ralph. I mean, he believed so strongly that if we did our job this would be the place for our families. And he believed it. Totally.
I'm sure we'll hear many more of those sentiments echoed on Friday. I thank you very kindly for your thoughts this evening.
Thank you.
That's former Deputy Premier and MLA for Drumheller Shirley McClellan and the Member of Parliament for Calgary Centre, Joan Crockatt, with us tonight.
The pursuit of body, mind, soul, how Hinduism